Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining again with another episode of Within the Cauldron, where the mysteries and secrets are within the cauldron. Tonight's guest is an author that I have read half of her books, I would say. Um, got more coming. But I just love the way she explains everything in her books about the goddesses. Um, Tonight's special guest is Courtney Weber. And thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank
I,
you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I I'm really delighted for you to be here too. I was like, I can't wait. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Okay. Um, you have a new book out called The Sacred Tears,
Hmm.
and it's about loss, grieving. In the book, you share rituals, prayers, and practices. How did this book come about?
Well, it was the book I really wanted to read, and I couldn't find when I needed it. So I went through a pretty serious loss going on 3 years ago. And in the wake of it, I was trying to find something that could help me navigate the grief process, but I wanted something that spoke to my own spiritual tradition, my own spiritual beliefs. One of and in the bookstores, I can find a lot of lovely, well-meaning books on grief and loss written by Christians and Buddhists.
Hmm.
Some of which I read, and I was able to pull a few things out that were helpful, but it was missing my own spiritual foundation. Um, and I could not find that in particular. There's in the last few years there's been a lot of witchcraft books that are focused on death, and that's incredibly important.
Yes.
And also we were missing a text that could help us navigate loss from a witch centered perspective. And I use witch in the broadest of terms, because there are plenty of people who are magically minded or spiritual but not religious, or pagan-esque, however you want to call it, that will probably find themselves reflected in these pages. I use witch because that's what I identify as, and it was seemed as the quickest shortcut to connecting to what I was trying to offer people who are looking for something to help them in the wake of loss. Something else I wanted to explore within the book is the question of what you do when you lose faith.
Hmm.
And that's something that witches don't talk about as much. And I think I'm painting a very broad stroke here. And a lot of more mainstream religions, or example, the Catholicism that I grew up with, if you lost your faith, it was a problem and the goal was to get it back. Instead of seeing that as a spiritual person, as someone who believes in some kind of higher power, there are going to be moments when you don't believe as much as you once did, or you don't believe at all, or you question. And instead of seeing that as a problem, simply see it as a natural experience. And that's also something that witches don't talk about a lot. And something that in some of my lecturing and my teaching is that sometimes people don't feel magical, or they don't feel as magical as they once did, or they're questioning their experiences. And that is not only fine, it's actually pretty healthy to have those questions. And nothing is more likely to make people question their faith than loss.
True.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and there's what do you do on the other side of that? Religion, spirituality, since humans first started looking up and believing in something bigger than themselves, has been a tool to help people grapple with loss, and help them with the problems of what it means to be human. Unfortunately, religion became one of the problems for as part of people being human. But I do not believe that that was ever what a religion's intent was. I think that our spiritual practices, our religious practices, have always been, I think, originally designed to help us cope with being human.
Yeah.
And that was a big piece in which was missing in the witchcraft path.
Yeah.
So that's how I
I
wrote
know
it.
I could have used this book, probably like 7 years ago. We had like 25 members, family and friends, coven members and everything, who passed away
Mm,
within like 5 years' time. Actually, about 4.5 years' time. And when you say you can lose faith, yeah, you can. You can
mhm,
really lose faith. So this is a book. I just got this book on audio, and I just started reading last night because I'm like, oh, I gotta read this book. I was like, a little bit about it, and I was just hooked. And I think I fell asleep, and I woke up and was like, yeah, yeah. But I repeated something I just heard, and so it just kept going on and on. And it's like, oh, I
mhm.
gotta track this. But so far, what I read, it's a very good book, and I wish this book was out, like I said, years ago, because yes, thank you for writing this book because I think it will help a lot of people and
Well,
everything.
I hope so. I mean, when I started writing it, it was, toward the end of COVID. It was the first time my husband and I had seen his family in a couple of years. They live in
Mhm.
Ohio. My mother-in-law has this wonderful finished basement. And so my husband was out going and seeing people he hadn't seen in a while because of the pandemic. And I self-described as sitting in this lovely basement like a troll and just writing all the things that I had wished I could say to myself from 6 months before. And I think I knew it was going to be a book. I think I knew I would be writing a book the night that my loss happened. I think I knew at that point, and I was like, "Oh, great, awesome! This is the next one." And when I say awesome, I don't mean awesome. I mean, and so I just sat down there and I just wrote everything I would have wanted myself to know 6 months earlier. And eventually that turned into something that could address all different kinds of loss.
Yeah.
And I wanted it, there's a lot of beauty and freedom in being on a spiritual but non-religious path. It
Mhm.
is carving your own way through the woods instead of having to live in the oppressive society. So you're
Right.
out on your own and you can define your own path. You have no one to tell you how to be, how to believe, and what to do. Just like the person
Mhm.
who has left the very confining, oppressive society and goes out to live, on their own in the woods and live off the land. And that's all well and good until you break your leg and you fall and you're alone in need of attention and treatment and healing. And
Mhm.
you don't have the resources of the community that you left, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Um, there are a lot of religions that have a lot of problems and also have a lot of tools to help people through their healing process. Whether those are the best tools for everybody is not for me to say, or whether those are even good tools at all. But the point is that most religions have some kind of tools to help people when
Mhm.
where they are grieving. And the witchcraft path is much more akin to being out in the woods alone and falling and hurting yourself.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that somebody shouldn't take that path, just like there's no reason why somebody shouldn't go hiking alone for a week at a time.
Mhm.
But if they do, they probably should bring their own at least their own first aid kit, or at least their own
Yes.
radio or something where they can call for help if they need it. And so
Mhm.
I wrote this book as a bag of elixirs, is what I call it. And that I'm out there in the woods and I have stumbled across someone who had fallen and had their proverbial leg broken. I'm speaking in metaphor for folks who are on the spectrum, and that this is
Yeah.
confusing. I'm definitely speaking all in metaphors here. Um, and hopefully there's an elixir in this bag that will help heal somebody enough so that they can find the next person with the next bag of elixirs to help them get a little further down the path, or to help them get a little further down the path until they can heal themselves. They can make their own elixirs. I didn't create it with the intention of creating a system for witches to grapple with grief. I created a bag of elixirs, and hopefully, everybody that opens the book will find at least one elixir that will at least alleviate at least one of the things that they are experiencing on their grief process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have, before we go on to the next question, we have a comment by Drew from Scotland. She want to know if you wrote the book Hecate. This is the book you're talking about.
Yes. Mhm.
Yes, this is her, the one and only Courtney.
That's me.
So, and it's another good book. Um, Nick, back to you, hun.
Let's see. What
Was
motivated
a
you?
question for me? Yeah, no.
What motivated you to become a writer?
I've always wanted to be a writer. When I was a little girl, I used to write little novels, in these little hard, like cloth bound books that my mom would get at the stationery store. And I would write little novels and illustrate them and things like that. And then as I got older, I would just go to my parents' giant, you know, monstrosity of a Stone Age machine. And I would type things out on the word processor and then print it out with a little, um, things on the side, little stuff that you could peel apart. You remember those? A little,
Yes.
the 90s printers, and I could print it out. And I actually veered away from writing for a long time. When I was in high school, I really went down the theater route, and was wanting to be an actress. And it really was actually my senior year in college when I was very close to graduating, with my theater degree, that I took a creative writing class just, for fun, and I described it as about to get married and running into an old flame and realizing the old flame was my true love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it felt like to be writing again. And so I started out on that path, and I was really trying to become a literary fiction writer, which I laugh at now. But I still want to be a fiction writer. I've still been trying to get some fiction pieces out there. But along the way, I kind of was really pulled into writing about religious experiences, witchcraft and the gods. And it doesn't surprise me that much, because I actually found some of my school writings from when I was like in grade school, and they're really cringy. I went to public school, but I was writing about Christianity at my public school. I was just writing about God at an early age. And now I just write about God differently than I did when I was like 7. I was like, oh, I can't believe I turned this in a public school. I kind of want to puke in my mouth right now. But but it's just always been that. And then when I've done more of my astrological chart, and they're like, oh, you're definitely going to be in communication, but you're also definitely going to be in esotericism. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. I'm writing about the occult. Okay, there you go. So I write because I don't know what else to do. I mean, I wrote a book on grief because I was grieving.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to get that out there. I'm writing a novel that's partly memoir right now, and I just will hopefully that will come into the world, and people be like, I'm not really sure which part of this urban fantasy thing that she wrote is memoir, and I'll be like, I'll let you guess.
We have some comments here. Let me see here. From Samantha, that's amazing. I have always wanted to work with Hecate, but I felt intimidated.
So then the question I would pose back to Samantha is, intimidated, how so? Where does the intimidation come from? One of the challenges that I think all gods are intimidating. And I also think that all gods are approachable at the same time too.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, there tends to be this buildup around Hecate as I remember seeing this TikTok video that was like, if you embrace Hecate, be prepared, for she will never let you go. And I'm like, really? Because that is not my experience whatsoever. Right. Is not the experience of a lot of people. So where does that come from? And I remember hearing something about like, oh, I learned once that you should never invoke Hecate into a circle, for everybody shall die. And I'm like, well, we all will die someday. And I have brought her into many a circle and have yet to die. So yes, at some point I will, but I doubt that's going to be directly related to me bringing Hecate into any circle. So I guess if Samantha wanted to, go further with that and explain what is it about, that Hecate that is intimidating, in particular with Hecate. Because I think all the gods are somewhat intimidating, and they should be. They're gods, right? But I'm curious, like, what is it about Hecate in particular?
This is her answer. She said, "Thank you. I am just been afraid of the shadow work and her underworld aspects."
Well, then that makes sense. The underworld is scary, and that is one of the reasons why the ancient Greeks, and again, that's kind of a shorthand because there are a lot of different cultures from the Mediterranean and the Middle East that honored and revered Hecate. But the underworld stuff is scary. Death is scary. We don't know what it is. And that's one of the reasons why people did fear her. It's also one of the reasons why the other gods in Olympus feared her, because she did scary stuff. At the same time, isn't it good to have somebody on your side who does scary stuff? Like, wouldn't it be nice to have, now I'm not saying Hecate is a hitman. I'm not saying Hecate is a hitman.
Right.
It would be nice to have somebody who was a hitman, who was your friend and had them in your back pocket. Not that you would need to utilize their, services, but just to know you have them, right? I mean, having somebody, I think of like EMTs, that's some scary stuff.
Yeah.
I'd be really glad though. Remember once I knew a guy that he kind of had a crush on me and I really wasn't all that interested in him. And then I found out he was an EMT and I'm like, I just became more interested. Because you do something, you work with something scary. That's kind of cool. So thinking about it that way is that having a connection with someone who has a familiarity and a comfort with things that are scary is kind of cool. As for the shadow side, I mean, any relationship with a deity of any ilk, they're going to take you into shadow. Sometimes I think people kind of skip in sillily when they think of certain gods as light gods, friendly gods. If you've read my book on Bridget, you'll see she totally shook my life upside down. And everyone's like, oh, Bridget, she's not a dark goddess. I'm like, have you ever actually come up on her? Because she's also a smith worker. She will pound you on an anvil, and then get rid of all the stuff you don't want anymore. So sometimes I think people are nervous about gods that tend to be more associated with shadow work.
Yeah.
They tend to walk in with, I think, having prepared themselves a little bit more like, I'm going to face my shadow. And I think sometimes those people have a better success with processing that work. They're not as thrown by it as opposed to somebody who's like, I just want to work with a light and happy goddess. So I'm going to pick that one. And that one's everything going, oh, that one's going to be fun. And then they're not expecting it. Right. Because I think all gods are going to do your shadow work. What they do for us when they come into our life is they're kind of throwing again a lot of metaphors at y'all. That's just how I communicate. When you go to some of these house flipper shows, when they come in, they go, oh, look at how you're living. You have wires coming through your ceiling. You have raccoons coming through the floor. And you haven't cleaned out your fridge in 3 years. Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to knock down every single wall in this house that shows any trace of mold, and out it goes. Well, the person who's been living in that house is kind of used to it by then. And so to them, that is terrifying that all this stuff is coming down and there's dust. And then there's, I can't breathe when they're like, well, then wear a mask. Oh God, why am I wearing a mask? What's happening to me? Oh, I've been removed from my home and all this stuff is coming out. And they go stay in a nice hotel for a week or two. And then they come back and the house has been renovated. Now that was complete chaos and it was very frightening and it was very stressful. And they're like, oh my God, what have I done? And that's when a lot of people stop. That's when they kick the God out of their life because they said, oh, this God is, they're not looking at the end result. Whereas the gods will come in and they're going to mess some stuff up for you. But on the other side, then you've got a renovated life. And a lot of people are afraid of that process. And rightfully so, it makes sense. I would be terrified to go through a house demo right now. I absolutely would. So I would really, really wanted to be on the other side of it. So that's where every God that you work with is going to do that for you. Sometimes I think that sometimes Hecate can be kind of sneaky about it. She will kind of, you think you're good, you think you're good, you think you're good. And then she'll come in and I've watched it happen numerous times with people. I think one of my favorite ones was this. Sometimes she has to do so very little to really take someone into themselves. There was once I was doing a ritual for a woman was ready to self-dedicate to Hecate. And I was trying to think of what to do for her ritual, what to do. And I was racking, and I'm a really good ritualist, but I was racking my brain. I could not think of something to do. And Hecate said, you do not have to worry about it. This woman's going to do herself in, just show up. I said, okay. And I was like, the whole time I'm like, and then we brought her up to the circle and we asked her to remove her glasses because we were going to put a blindfold on her. The act of taking off her glasses, she just broke down in tears and sobbed and said, "Please don't make me take off my glasses. I cannot do this. I can't do this without see where I'm going. I can't do this. You can't let me you can't take my glasses away." And through that was a major point. And that's when Hecate was like, see? She had to just simply go through all she had to do. And she didn't know this, but I was just in my mind, it was like, someone's going to take her glasses, we blindfold her, and then walk 3 steps forward. And that was all she had to do for herself. And she overcame this huge fear of, first of all, the fear of not being able to see. And second of all, the symbolic fear for herself of not being able to see her path and where it was going. And that did so much for her. And her path went wild a few years later. Like, she was supposed to be, she was with this guy, and I was watching it. And then, you know, he like threw her out of the house. Within 6 months, though, she moved in with the man that she's now married to, who like worships her. Worships her. Like, when they're together, she walks by and he's like, "Do you see her floating on air? Do you see her?" Like, you know, I just absolutely. And this other guy, and she was brokenhearted, but this other man was just like, how does this woman exist? She is the greatest gift of the goddess. Like, he's almost literally worships at her feet, you know. And that is what she will do for us, or what any will do, you know. So it's they're all going to have shadow, is what I'm saying. Let them do their work, though. Don't fight the work. Like, what you bring in a demo crew into your house, and they start doing their work, and you're like, "Stop! No, don't touch that! I love that chipped plaster. That paint from 1920. Don't take it away from me!" And they're like, "Okay,
yeah."
I hope that helps you, Samantha." And I'm laughing not because I'm laughing at you. I laugh because I'm a witch and we cackle, you know.
Before we go to this one comment, it's kind of like I'm going to make it to 2 questions like here in the same one. Okay, so I know you written the books about Hecate, the Morrigan, and Bridget. Okay. And that is giving your readers a great way to start the journey with these goddesses. Okay. And why these goddesses? Okay, that's one question. The second question is from Drew, and she says, "I only know snippets." Yeah, sure. I only know snippets of the goddess history. Is there a book you recommend to learn the history?
So, it depends on which goddess you're curious about. So for my books on Bridget the Morgan and Hecate, I do a lot of history in each one because I'm a nerd, and so I do explore the history in the history of those 3 goddesses through those books. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely, you know, start with mine. And each of them also have bibliographies attached, because then you can also pick up where you left off and then continue to do the work from there. So that's a place to start. The other person wanted to know about why those 3. So the first one, again, talking about there are no light and friendly goddesses. Some of them are a little more jovial, I think, up at the front, Bridget being one of them. So Bridget was the first goddess who crossed my path when I was working, when I first entered into witchcraft and paganism. And I struck a deal with her because I was trying to get some help on a writing assignment. And so I asked her if she would help me with this writing assignment. I said, "I'll write a book for you." And I just envisioned I would write a book of poems and like stick it on my altar, and that was it. I didn't finish that little book of poems. And so for years, she was pestering me for that book. Anytime I was in ritual with someone, the message would be like, "Bridget wants to know where her book is." And I'd honestly forgotten about the promise that I'd made. And I couldn't figure out why there were certain parts of my life that were kind of stuck and weren't working so well. And I was like, I don't understand what this is going on. Why is my life kind of stuck? My romantic situation is crap. My writing career is going nowhere. I don't have any money. What is happening? Why is my life stuck? And eventually, after getting that message probably 6 or 7 times in different rituals. Somebody finally came through with a message that said, you promised me something. She was speaking on behalf of Bridge. You promised me something and you didn't deliver. Why do you think I have put your life on hold? And that's when it had occurred to me that that's what I was missing. I remembered making that promise. And at the same time, people were asking me questions like, where can I find a good comprehensive book on Bridget? Now, there's a lot of great books on Bridget that have come out since then. This was about 10 years ago. At the time, I couldn't point anybody to one. So I wrote one. And then after that, I think I just kind of wanted to go further with the Irish. And I was curious about, similar with the book about the Morgan. Oh, there were a lot of really wonderful books that were focused very much on history and lore of the Morgan, but not one that had more of the history and the lore with accessible practices. There were a lot of books that were very full of unique personal gnosis, as people call it, like their own interpretations, their own things, but they really weren't connected to the history and the lore and the culture in Ireland. And I wanted to have a book come out that was both. And so I wrote the Morgan. And then after that, Hecate was kind of waiting in the wings, like, hey, you wrote those for those two. What about me? And I had worked with a lot of witches who were dedicated to Hecate. So in many ways, it was kind of like a surrogate Hecate priestess, because she wasn't one I was really working with at the time. But she was one that I worked alongside. And so I was like, well, okay, let's do this one for her as well. Because it was the same thing, is that people wanted a good comprehensive book on Hecate that was lore, but also for a modern witch practitioner. So that's how that happened. A lot of folks have asked me about if I'm going to write another goddess book, and I don't have that intention right now. I'm not going to cross it off in the future, but writing books on goddesses, they really do come in and shake your life up. And so I've really been all that excited to invite a new one in, but we'll see if there will be part 2s of any of my first 3 books. So
I can imagine, like, you're sitting with a goddess for months, like, pondering these and like, ooh.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. It's the demo team. They come in and they do powerful things, but they also do things that are difficult. And sometimes I'm like, I'm okay with the hole in my ceiling over there. I'm good. Not ready for a demo. I'm fine. I'm fine.
I can relate to her.
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Was that your husband?
You're telling the truth, because that's exactly what the goddess did to me years back. And until recently, it's like I'm finally at peace with myself. I'm finally at peace.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. 100%. 100%.
And Nick, what's our next question?
You do virtual tarot classes. You had one on the 4th, and then you're going to be doing another 4-session one on the 18th. Can you tell us more about that?
So that must have been confusing. I'm actually wrapping up a 4-part virtual tarot course. Registration opened on January 4th, and then the class began January 18th. So I'm wrapping that up, and I'll be actually bringing out the intermediate version later in the spring. So people that have some tarot experience that want to go further with it, learn more about reversals, about timing, about looking at the broader picture, that kind of, or formulating a question, that kind of thing. So that'll be coming up in the spring. And so my tarot courses are like really for people who are ready. I've been told that, half an hour learning with me will teach you more than a whole bunch of books on tarot. And I say that as a tarot author. I have also written a book on tarot, and it's a great book, but this is like, so I've got, I've got some, like I said, I'm just wrapping up this 4-part series to help people just like try to get past some of the big stumbling blocks in tarot, which is like, how do I memorize all 78 cards? Which, first of all, you do not need to memorize all 78 cards. And then say, where do I pull in the universal meaning, and where do I go for my intuitive meaning? Absolutely. Makes total sense. That kind of thing. and being able to look at building your own language with the tarot. That's really, really key, because it is a language. And just learning of language by like only using the definitions of certain words as they're written in that language's dictionary really limits your ability to be able to communicate. Yeah, that's helpful to have a good foundation and a certain vocabulary, but then you're missing slang and context, and also inside jokes, anything that, or cultural relevance. There's a lot that it comes into the communication of language. And so that's where it's really important for folks to allow themselves to build their own language with the tarot. Just like we all have a shorthand language with the people we love the most. And that's how we can really, really, deeply communicate in a really powerful way. More so than just memorizing words in the English dictionary. So that's really what my work is all about. But I have a really incredible class that it's a brand new class, and I'm just starting it now. And it's called Bridget for Writers. So I'm doing this with Orla Minxie Costello, who is a native Irish expert on Bridget. And of course, I wrote that book on Bridget as well. And she's been a goddess that's been with me for a long time. And it is a 4-week virtual class that we're digging into the myths of Bridget and using them to inspire writers to spark their creative transformation, to break past their writer's blocks, and to really build their own Bridget practice, whether with their writing or independent of their writing. So that starts on March 1st, and folks will be able to register for that early next week. So I really hope folks can make that. I'm so excited about this. This is the kind of class I could have used many, many years ago when I was both learning about Bridget and kind of struggling with my writing. So I'm excited to be able to offer that. And I love Orla. She is one of the most lovely people out there. And she runs the Bridget Forge Facebook group, which many folks may be familiar with, and it's just all around fabulous. So that's going to be out very soon. And so please keep your eyes out that. I can't wait. I want people in there really badly.
Well, the old man here has a question for you.
Yeah, you are the creator of your own tarot deck. The Tarot of the Burrows.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide to create a deck?
So I was reading tarot in a lot of burlesque clubs in New York City in the late aughts, and I was reading for a lot of drunk people. And I would have to shout my readings across the table and say things like, "You see this card right here? This represents your boss." And the more I did that, the more I started seeing the archetypes in the tarot in the different people in New York City. So I would see like the King of Pentacles being the big money person who, or the Knight of Pentacles being somebody who's like day trading and, really pushing it there. And then I knew a lot of poets that were seemed to me like the King of Cups, super romantic and offering lots of love, and just the experiences of being being a person in the world in New York City. And I tried creating a number of different ways and ended up partnering with a photographer who helped me really bring it to life. So that was a project that would not leave me alone until I made it. It's so funny. It's been so many years since that's been out in the world. It's been like 15 years. It's crazy. But that was a beautiful experience. And also, just like when you bring the gods into your life, when you create a tarot deck, you also live through the tarot itself.
Right. Sounds interesting. It really does.
Yeah. And you can still find some copies on eBay. It's no longer in print, but you can still find copies on eBay. So, yeah.
Wow. I've seen it a long time ago. Yeah, I've seen it a long time ago.
The dog's biting me. Why are you chewing on me? You're getting up for this energy, aren't you?
Our dog always loves. She likes the podcast. Our dog does. So
she gets stirred up. She feels the energies. Yeah. She gets all stirred up because we're over here giggling, and all of a sudden she's all happy, aren't you?
Well, let's continue on.
Be nice. Be nice.
Going back to the tarot, you've been teaching tarot and speaking at the Tarot Symposia for around the country for a decade. Your book explores the Fool, the Major Arcana, the Court cards, and the suits. why just those cards? Is it because people have a hard time with their meanings or understanding what they're meaning?
Well, I mean, that encompasses the whole deck right there. I mean, the court cards, the number cards, the major arcana, those are the 3 sections. So, the book is called Tarot for One, The Art of Reading for Yourself. And so it helps us figure out what, breaking past this idea of, like, a lot of folks can read really beautifully for others, but they have a hard time reading for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, yeah, that's why I wrote that, is so people could try to do it. And also it's really easy. I wouldn't say it's easy to read for yourself, but it is possible and it is key.
I think people are afraid to roast themselves is a big part of it. That they get that really hard reading and they're just like, I just can't be that critical to myself. And it's like, you need the lesson. You need to listen to them. But like, I get it.
I don't know that necessarily the tarot is always critical. I mean, I also have a virtual platform for people that are wanting to get deeper with their witchcraft and their tarot. And sometimes it's one of the things we talk about a lot, is that don't assume that the tarot is just criticizing you every time. Sometimes the tarot is telling you that you're kicking butt. You're doing awesome things.
Yeah.
But I think they're afraid of the consequence of, like, okay, if they're going to be mean to me, I don't want to do it. But otherwise, they're like, yeah, I just don't want to be the person to give myself the bad advice or the scary advice.
I think I actually see it. I mean, you may, I certainly validate and believe you in your experience. What my experience has honestly been the inverse, is that people are more afraid that they're only seeing what they want to see. So if they see a good outcome coming, they're like, oh, I'm only seeing what I want to see. I'm not really actually seeing, I'm not actually seeing what the cards are telling me is there. And that to me is very sad. Like it's not, it doesn't have to be that way at all. Like you can trust yourself. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So.
Now, you have a Facebook page that I look at every day, Instagram, and you even have a podcast that's called The Witch Life.
Yes.
Are there any other places that you can tell our audience where they can see you, get a hold of you at?
Yeah. So best place is my website is CourtneyAWeber.com. And also I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Courtney A. Weber. And, that my Instagram is linked to my Facebook page. I'm not as active on Facebook. It's more of like an automatic thing there, but those are the best places to reach me. I guess I should be propping myself up on Blue Sky a little more. My plate's really full right now, so I'm just trying to keep afloat.
Yeah, I see you post on the Terra each day. It's like, oh, Courtney, I got to look at that. So
yeah, I post a daily tarot message on Mondays through Fridays.
yeah,
yeah, like I said, I've had some changes in my living situation recently, so I've not been able to do quite as much of the content on Instagram and TikTok as I previously did. But part of it is because I'm creating some really incredible courses right now. And so a lot of my time needs to go that way. But definitely, if you're an Instagram person, follow me there. You can also follow me on Facebook. I'll be there. But my website, Courtney A. Weber, is updated regularly. And I have a Substack. So that's where, if you sign up for that, also Courtney A. Weber, everywhere it's Courtney A. Weber. I use the A because there's a couple of other Courtney Webers out there, but they're like horticulturists or volleyball players, and they're probably great people, but we're not the same person. And and this so then I my newsletter comes out Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays is always about magic. Thursdays is always about tarot. So that's where you can just get your regular magical or tarot tips, but also a really great way if you want to work with me, whether it's about to work with your gods or goddesses, or you want to more with tarot, or you want to connect with another group of magically minded people. My virtual platform is called the Cauldron Calling, and you can find that on Patreon under my name. And that is a really wonderful place where you can, it's the kind of space where you can bring those kind of sticking points in your magic. Like, I want to work with this goddess, but I'm intimidated. what do we do about this? And you can hear from other people who have been through that. And I'm happy to help coach you. We have virtual gatherings twice a month where people can bring in their magical questions. Like, had this amazing conversation today where I was talking about some of the animal symbolism that I've been seeing recently in the world around me. We were also talking about what to do if God's call you from two different pantheons, or what to do if you do this major banishing on your life and then something really strange happens. Like, wasn't the banishing supposed to get rid of negativity, but what does that mean? Like, this is where, kind of what we do is I help people get unstuck with their magic. And ultimately what my goal is with my work in this platform is to help people undo the harmful and restrictive thought patterns and actions that are legacies of hierarchical religions. So that's where my goal is like, let's try to, if we're really going to be out of the oppressive village and out in the wilderness on our own, let's get out. And unfortunately, sometimes a lot of those thought patterns and habits follow us. And my goal is to help us get out of them.
I love that. That is probably one of the hardest aspects of people moving into paganism and different witchy aspects, is the deconstructing from dogma and trying to embrace different values and things like that, and like where things sit. And I absolutely agree. That's amazing work.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's truly the joy of my life, aside from my daughter, who's obviously the best joy of my life. But it's really a, I mean, I find myself getting tripped up on that a lot. And I think even if folks are, one of the things I hear about is, I'm not worthy to approach the goddess. And my thought is, who says who? Well, I don't know. Okay, that's a legacy from the old religion. Even if you didn't grow up in that religion, it's still kind of in the water in the United States culture, especially, but I think in a lot of the Western world. And it's like, well, am I doing it wrong? Am I disappointing them? And I'm like, well, what's the barrier? What's the level? And at the same time, I offer some kind of parameters that, I think there are some things we want to keep in mind. It's not just like, oh, it's whatever you feel. It's whatever your intention is. In my experience, if you offer something to a god or goddess, you need to make good on your offer. If they don't like it, well, they're not going to be like randomly judgmental of you because you didn't honor them in a way that was honoring enough, that you didn't. I don't believe that they're looking for us to self-flagellate ourselves. Approach them with respect, of course, but not necessarily approach them groveling and, but like, I am a horrible, nasty person. And I'm like, okay, where does that come from? Right. Who said that? And why would someone, how is that respectful to show up to someone that way? Like if you approach her. Anyway, I'm going off on one of my tirades. We could be here a while. I think I warned you, I'm a soapboxer.
That's okay. My husband, he can talk a lot too. So
yeah,
cool.
Talk a lot.
Yeah,
too much at times. I get myself in trouble. Well, anyway, Courtney, these writings are really good. Your books are really, really good.
Thank you.
And you will leave a legacy for all of the work that you have done. If you could have someone that you could have dinner with and spend some time with, already passed over, who would it be?
Oh, it would be my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, he died when I was about 6. And that was my first real experience with death. No, I think I was a little bit older. It was 8. And
same year.
Yeah, and I didn't really know him as well as, he was very sick when I was around. So I remember, this kindly old man, but he was very low energy and couldn't really play with us a whole lot. But the stories that I've been raised with him is just the stories of his, very salt of the earth, life and demeanor, and his love of children, and his, his apparently his humor, and just a lot. This old Southern man who was worked very hard and died too young. It's a very, very common story. Is someone who his dream was, to have giant property with all of his kids on the property and all of their kids. He wanted them all close by, and that didn't happen for him. But there was, so I, he, I, some, it's, I think he'd the person I'd want to know the most, because I think there was a lot of his life that would have been interesting to unpack. So,
yeah, my grandfather was my hero, my everything. So 2024 has passed, but you had a lot of conference. What should we look forward to in 2025 from you?
my God, this has been turning out to be a really full year, and I'm so excited. So, I will be in the Upper Midwest in March. I'm going to be at PaganaCon. I will be at the Malway Brothers in Chicago and at the Museum of Witchcraft in Cleveland. So I'll be doing some talks on Hecate and the Morrigan and on grieving and all of those places. So please check them out. In May, I'm co-hosting a live conference here in Portland, Oregon, May 1st through 4th. It's called Spirit Northwest. We have some incredible presenters from all across the country who are coming. Our keynotes are Amy Blackthorne, Maria Minnis, and J. Allen Cross. And I'm going to be presenting as well. We're not quite sure what I'm doing yet, because right now I'm on the logistics end of that. So that's going to be phenomenal. We haven't had like a Pacific Northwest conference in a really, really long time. And it's at this historic hotel. It's an Embassy Suites, but it's in a historic hotel in downtown Portland. And it's just an exceptional area. Then in July, I will be at Mystic South. I'm headlining there along with Pamela Chen and Maria Bamani. So I'm so excited about that. So I'm looking forward to getting back to Atlanta and hopefully doing some speaking engagements in Atlanta and DC while I'm up there. And then in November, I will be co-hosting a virtual conference with my podcast again called So Mote That Con, which in the past we've had some really incredible keynotes for that. Last year it was Rachel True and Matt Aron. We had Laurel K. Hamilton the year before. The year before that was Connell. So I have my dream team in my head of who I'd like to have this year. So that's always a really fun time as well, because you can be there with other people, but you don't have to wear pants. So I guess you could argue that you don't have to wear pants at a pagan gathering, but it's,
That's true.
It depends on which room you go into, but this is definitely a pants optional gathering because it's on Zoom webinar. So you can really be in your bed drinking your coffee with your Bailey's Irish cream in it, watching this conference and just, hearing these incredible people.
Well, Chicago is close to us. It's probably about 5 hours away. So
okay.
Nice to see us there.
Yeah, I'd love to see you there. Yes, I'm doing my talk on Hecate there, and I'm super excited about it. And there's a cat that just moved behind me. That was not,
Animals. What are we going to do with them? Well, Courtney, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's been fun, learning experience. Thank you to the audience who participated in the comments and everything. Thank you. Don't forget to like our page and share it and subscribe and go over to Courtney's pages, subscribe, support her. And you really need to get on where she has a tarot cards once a week, or every day, once a day, because you would just love them. I know I do. I look forward to every day.
Oh, I appreciate that, Chrissy. That's so lovely to hear.
I see the notification come up, Courtney's tarot. And I was like, oh, gotta go there right now. I'm like the first one there, I think.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much.
Are you welcome?
Hey, Courtney, before you go, you're doing the goddess proud. Thank you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I never pretend to know the will of any of them. So, but we'll see how things continue. But thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. Well, that's it for today, folks. We see you next week. And go out there, get Courtney's books, go to her pages, website is down below, and even the newsletter. And I just want to say many blessings to you all. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Mary Part.